Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is JGOD. In today's video, we're going to focus on the Kilo 141, and I'm going to be breaking down the individual stats, recoil patterns, and explain how this is actually a top tier rifle, regardless if it's in multiplayer or Warzone, once you understand how the recoil pattern works, because it's a little non-traditional. Keep in mind that this is part of a series and I've done several weapons, and the overall goal is to learn how to make the ultimate class setup for you, because obviously your playstyle, skill level, there's a lot of variables you got to factor in. My goal is to kind of teach you what each of the attachments do, so you know how to better make your own class setup to your individual preferences. And a lot of people have been requesting the high damage rifles as part of this series, so I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to add it to the poll. Once this gets to 2,000 likes, we'll go ahead and start working on that video. And it's either going to be for the Scar, the Odin, or the AK-47. And if you're brand new or just not currently subscribed, make sure you do subscribe with notifications on, so you'll be able to find your way back to the channel. Another side note, I've finished setting up my Discord, so if you're looking to find a group, or maybe you have additional questions, this is going to be a great opportunity for that. So that'll be linked down in the description. So this ends up being probably the most popular part of the gun series. And we're going to start off with looking at these individual recoil patterns. I've evolved these over time. So if you see some of the older ones, they don't have quite as much information, but I do have the base Kilo here. And then you can see the different bullet spread in blue. The time to aim down sight is 267 milliseconds, and then plus or minus 0 is based off of this individual time. And what you're looking at here is the muzzle brake spread in blue, and then this green one is basically this one copied here directly behind it, so you can kind of see how much it's actually helping. You can see you get about an extra half frame in aim down sight time, so it will be a little bit slower. I decided to include these. A lot of times I just do the monolithic suppressor because it's Warzone, but I'm incorporating a little bit of multiplayer in here as well, because these are viable in multiplayer, because you don't always have to run a suppressor, because when you fire, you do not pop up on the minimap unless there's a UAV. So that's just a little side note there. Compensator, we have the same exact thing here, half frame, so these are pretty equivalent. But overall, it looks like the compensator's tying in. And remember that these types of attachments are stackable. So if you do the compensator with maybe the Commando foregrip, you might actually get better results than just the compensator by itself. We have the 16.6 inch barrel, and you can see it's cutting down just a little bit. It's not really much at all. And you can see on the 16.6 inch barrel, you're going to lose one frame here. It's going to be a little bit slower. And then it ends up having a little bit more improved recoil, but not much. When we get to the 19.8 inch barrel, we're going to gain additional 2 frames, and then that cuts it down a little bit more consistent. It's kind of still pretty even. There's not a huge difference there, but it does kind of tighten up those bullets so they're a little bit closer together, and you don't get this little loop that happens there where it kind of arcs up near as much. It kind of flattens that part out. You can see the Commando foregrip. It's kind of cutting it down a little bit. Again, it kind of straightens out that little curve, so you're getting a little bit less of that. We have the Merc foregrip. It's kind of cutting down there. We got a couple different options. This one looks like it's doing like the job of the Commando and then some. Obviously, this is a 1 frame penalty, but it looks like it is kind of helping out as the dots go that way. You can see it kind of tightens it up, gets rid of a little bit of the bend, and it kind of does recoil control as well as a little bit of stabilization. We have the operator, which looks like it's a waste in this scenario. 9 times out of 10, the operator has been a complete waste. I think there's only like 1 or 2 weapons that I've covered where it'd be even viable, but the Merc or the Ranger just end up doing the job better. It doesn't look like the Ranger's doing much in this scenario. It kind of just looks like it's still bouncing around quite a bit. But as you can see, it still has that 1 frame penalty. Overall, I think it's going to be a tie right here. If you're just looking about underbarrels, it's going to be between the Commando and the Merc. It just really depends on which one's a little easier to control. So that's kind of a toss up. You do get 1 frame penalty with the Merc, so you kind of got to judge based off how the feel is to you. Next up is the rubberized. Sometimes people run stipple grip tape, which is good for faster aim down sight by 1 frame, but this will actually give you reduced recoil, which doesn't look like it's doing much. It kind of tightens up a little bit up at the top, but for the most part, you are getting minor. This could be one where maybe you practice combining the rubberized with maybe the compensator and see how that stacks. And obviously there could be a ton of combinations here, depending if you're combining the barrel, the muzzle, the grip, and the underbarrel. Like, there's a lot of combinations that you can do there. We also have the no stock, and this is the one where it's going to actually increase your recoil but speed up your aim down sight to 233 milliseconds, and that's 2 frame difference. You can see that you are increasing the recoil here a little bit, kind of extends out, and obviously the further you get away, that's going to be magnified. And especially if you're going to be using the Kilo where it dominates, which is at range, you're going to want that additional tightening spread so you can hit those shots and not get outgunned by a Grau, or an M13, which are also laser accurate at the furthest ranges. And then I did something a little bit different on this one. I actually went with the lowest recoil option, regardless of what the aim down sight speed is. And you can see it's considerably slow. And you can see it tightens up and there's almost no recoil. I don't think there's ever a way to get zero recoil. I know some of the semi-autos, if you fire slow enough, you will get no recoil. But when it comes to fully auto, you're pretty much always going to have some kind of little bit of recoil or randomness bouncing in a general direction. You can see the Warzone best. So this is a solid class setup in my opinion. And you do get a little bit slower aim down sight, but it's not like terrible. And keeping in mind, you're going to combine this probably with an SMG. You could get this a little bit faster, which we're going to talk about once we get to the attachments. If you're going to combine this with the sniper rifle, maybe this is going to be your short to medium range. It kind of just depends. But for Warzone, typically you're going to use this for your long range option and not using a sniper. But if you're going to use a sniper, you just trade it out. Then there's the best multiplayer option. You can see there's no penalties. So this one's going to aim down sight pretty good. And then you have a little bit of recoil reduction there. Not quite as tight as the best or the lowest, but it's still pretty measurable. So we have the individual damage for the Kilo. It does 28 damage, drops off to 23, down to 18. Headshot multiplier brings that to 43, 34, and 28. In core game modes, it's going to be 4, 5, or 6 shots to kill. Mix in some headshots, you could reduce that down to 3 to 4 shots. Just do the math on 100 health there. And that gives you the milliseconds time to kill. And then we're going to end up converting all this information to a chart. So it'll be a little bit more visible how it compares to the rest of the 5.56 rifles. Warzone, full plates, 250. You just kind of do the math, 9, 11, 14. And then if you get headshots, 6, 8, and 9. Again, doing the damage values here on 250 health or 100 health plus the 150 from plates. So right here, 616, 770, 1,000 milliseconds. So that's an entire second of bullets impacting at that range. That's how long it takes for 14 bullets to impact. And then we have faster TTK with those headshots involved. So those individual damage values, they change depending on the attachment. If you have the base weapon is a 32 millimeter drop off. So it's going to go from the first damage, drops off to the next damage, all the way up into 55. And then it'll have the same damage infinitely from 56 all the way on 100, 200 meter. It doesn't matter. It won't have another drop off. We use the Whisper barrel. It has an integrated suppressor, so that's cool, but you're not getting much range out of it. And you can see right there, it doesn't end up giving you a ton of range, but there is a little bit of an increase, and you save an attachment slot since you don't have to run the monolithic suppressor. So this is actually a great option for multiplayer, as we'll talk about. We have the 16.6, which is going to give you 40 and 70. Those are the damage, about a 25% increase. The 19.8, 44, 40, and 77. With a 40% increase. So even though this is a minor difference and you might want to go ahead and go with the 16.6 in multiplayer, one of the advantages of going with the 19.8 is the added recoil reduction and bullet velocity. So it's a lot easier when you shoot your target that the bullets connect. We included this with the monolithic suppressor because obviously in Warzone, you want to stay off the map as much as possible. So it ends up being a minor difference there. It just depends on your preference, but you can get all the way up to 82 meters, which is just insane with that combination. Obviously, you're going to be able to shoot and you're going to have a 5-shot kill pretty much anywhere within multiplayer if you go ahead and go that route. And then in Warzone, you're going to get that second damage until it drops off to that 14. So that's a huge difference in TTK between before 82 meters and after with that difference. So I ended up talking about this graph over on Twitter as well as in my previous video where I was talking about that the Growl isn't necessarily the best weapon in terms of time to kill. It ends up being other weapons that can compete as long as you're able to control the recoil. If we look just at time to kill, this includes the rate of fire, all that stuff to get time to kill, overall damage. That's how we get time to kill, and then we convert that based off the health. This is the time to kill on the left, so the lower the number is, the better. And the distance in meters is on the bottom. You can see that if we're looking at the Kilo, it's going to be this middle yellow line. You can see it's pretty competitive. It gets beat out by the M4 and the Ram pretty much up to 40 meters. And then you can see between around 40 meters where the long shot happens up to about 45 meters, it ends up actually being the best weapon at that range out of all those rifles. Then it has a huge drop off and then it gets beat out by the Ram and the M4 again. And you can see it's beating out the Growl and the M13. And then as you get all the way up to the 85 meter mark, it's actually pretty solid right here. You can see where the Kilo dominates is within that range, but normally you're not going to encounter that within multiplayer. So that's why the class setup for multiplayer is going to be a little bit different. This was obviously with the longest barrel. So with this, you can see that it's going to be very competitive with the Growl and the M13. the furthest ranges all the way up until about 85 meters. So when we look at this same example, when it comes to Warzone, we're going to end up with additional 150 damage required, so a total of 250. And you can see not much really changes at all. As far as the overall damage, you just have more engagements that are a little bit longer range. So that's kind of something you got to consider when you're using the weapon. How are you going to use it? Are you going to use it for close range? It's going to get beat out by most SMGs. It's going to be beat out by the M4 and the RAM. So it's probably not your best close range engagement option. So ideally you want to be able to make sure you're using it within this 45 meters all the way up to about 85 meter range, because that's where it's going to pretty much outgun everybody except for maybe the RAM, if that person has good recoil control and absolute lasers you. A lot of times you'll see PC players use that just because recoil control is way easier on PC than it is with a controller where your thumbsticks barely move, you know? So we actually have the 3 class setups for you. We'll go ahead and take a look at all those. I've already prepped them, so that saves a little bit of time. I will talk about how these differ. This is gonna be the one that has the lowest recoil. So it's the compensator, the 19.8-inch Prowler barrel, the Merc foregrip, which obviously you can combine that with the Commando if you want to try something different. Both are probably going to give you really good recoil patterns, 60 round mag, and the rubberized grip tape. Keep in mind, this is going to feel very slow. If you want to mix this up a little bit and you feel like the recoil is manageable, maybe get rid of the rubberized and put on a laser, or go to the Commando, because that will save you a little bit on your aim down sight speed by 1 frame. So that's how this one works. Next one up is actually the best for Warzone. And I actually did 2 different class setups for that I'm going to give you. Obviously, the one I tested is the one on screen here. It's the monolithic suppressor. Keep in mind that the monolithic suppressor is giving you that little bit of extra range. If you don't really care about that, you could go with the tactical suppressor. It's still going to give you around the same penalty. Tactical suppressor is usually about 1 frame, and the monolithic suppressors about 1.5 to 2 frames depending on the weapon. So normally it's only going to be a hair slower than the tactical suppressor. We still go with that Singard arms barrel, the Merc foregrip, the 60 round mag. You could go with the 100 round mag, but that's going to slow down your aim down sight time a little bit. And in addition to that, it's going to slow down your mobility. So it's not going to be that good at getting around the map. But if you don't really care as much about the mobility because you're running a SMG as a secondary, then you might as well go with the 100 round mag. It kind of just depends on your preference. And the tac laser, we know, is a game changer. We kind of talked about it in the previous video. This can actually help you out because it's percentage based on your ADS speed. So the slower your ADS, the more it actually helps. So in this case, it ends up helping between 2 to 4 frames, depending on how you set up the rest of the class setup. If you wanted to use this as your long range option, and maybe you didn't like the optics, you could get rid of the Merc foregrip, because the VLK optic may be able to help you out with that. In practice, I still feel like the recoil was a little bit weird at range. Still manageable, but it just felt like I could hit my shots a little bit more accurately when I dropped the tac laser and with the Merc foregrip. So that's kind of 3 different combinations you can have there, just depending on your preference and if you like the iron sights or if you prefer an optic. And the class setup for multiplayer that I think is amazing is the Singard Arms Whisper, the Merc foregrip, 60 round mag, stipple grip tape, and the tac laser. This one you could save a frame, and it can actually be faster than the default if you go with the Commando foregrip. Again, experiment, see how that feels. Personally, I just like the Merc better. The Commando looks good on paper, that it should help just as well at flattening that individual recoil that is up and to the left. And that pretty much ends up being the video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you learned something new, make sure you hit that like button. If you're brand new, looking to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.